I'll never forget the sound of the splash. It echoed across the lake that afternoon, cutting through the laughter and casual conversation like a gunshot. My heart stopped before my brain could even process what I just witnessed. One moment, my daughter Emma was standing on the dock, her hands protectively cradling her 7-month pregnant belly. The next moment, she was gone, pushed backward into the cold, murky water by the very people who were supposed to love and protect her. Her mother-in-law, Patricia, stood there with her hands still extended, frozen in the aftermath of what she'd just done. Her husband, Richard, had his arms crossed, watching the ripples spread across the water's surface with what I can only describe as cold satisfaction. And my son-in-law, David, Emma's husband, the father of her unborn child, he just stood there. He didn't move. He didn't shout. He didn't dive in to save his wife. He just watched. Time seemed to slow down as I ran toward the dock, my legs feeling like they were moving through cement. I was screaming Emma's name, but the sound seemed distant, like it was coming from someone else's throat. Behind me, I heard my brother Marcus's heavy footsteps pounding against the wooden planks, faster and more purposeful than mine. Marcus hit the water before I even reached the edge. He'd always been the athlete in our family, the one who could react in a crisis while the rest of us were still processing what was happening. I watched as his powerful strokes cut through the water, reaching Emma in what felt like both an eternity and a single heartbeat. When he pulled her up, her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and terror. She was gasping, coughing up lake water, her arms wrapped around her stomach in that universal gesture of a mother trying to protect her child. Marcus supported her weight effortlessly, swimming them both back to the dock with grim determination etched across his face. I helped pull Emma out of the water, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip her arms. She was trembling, soaked to the bone, her summer dress clinging to her pregnant form. I wrapped my jacket around her shoulders and held her close, feeling her heart racing against my chest. That's when I looked up at Patricia, Richard, and David. They were still standing there, no remorse, no panic, no humanity in their eyes. Patricia had the audacity to brush off her hands, as if she'd just finished some unpleasant but necessary task. Richard's expression remained cold and detached. And David, my God, David, he finally moved, but only to take a step back, as if distancing himself from the crime his parents had just committed. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a tragic mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. This was calculated. And this was the moment that changed everything. To understand how we got to that terrible afternoon by the lake, I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to when Emma first brought David home to meet our family. It was 3 years ago, and Emma was glowing with that particular radiance that comes with new love. She'd met David at her marketing firm, where he worked in the finance department. He seemed nice enough, polite, well-dressed, ambitious. He said all the right things, complimented my cooking, bonded with my husband over baseball. On the surface, he appeared to be exactly the kind of man any parent would want for their daughter. But I've always believed in trusting your instincts, and something about David never quite sat right with me. It wasn't anything I could point to specifically. He was never rude or disrespectful. He treated Emma well, or so it seemed. But there was something hollow behind his eyes, something performative about his warmth. My brother Marcus felt it too. After that first dinner, he pulled me aside and said, "There's something off about that guy. He's too rehearsed, like he's playing a role." But what could we do? Emma was in love, and she was an adult. We couldn't protect her from her own choices. The real warning signs came when we met David's parents. Patricia and Richard Sterling were what you might call old money, wealthy, connected, and absolutely convinced of their own superiority. They lived in a sprawling estate on the outskirts of town, the kind of place with manicured gardens and staff who served drinks on silver trays. From the moment we arrived for that first meeting, they made it clear that we were beneath them. Patricia looked at Emma like she was inspecting a piece of furniture she was considering purchasing and finding it wanting. She asked invasive questions about Emma's family background, her education, her career prospects. Richard barely acknowledged my husband and me, speaking only to ask what we did for a living, then losing interest immediately when he learned we were middle class. But the worst part was how they treated Emma. They criticized everything about her, her choice of wine, her laugh, her opinions, even her posture. And David? He sat there in silence, letting his parents tear down the woman he claimed to love. He didn't defend her once. Emma tried to brush it off afterward. "They're just protective," she said. "They'll warm up once they get to know me." I wanted to tell her to run, to get as far away from that family as possible. But again, what could I say? She was 26 years old, and convinced she could win them over with patience and kindness. The wedding was a nightmare. Patricia controlled every detail, turning what should have been Emma's day into a showcase of sterling family wealth and prestige. Emma wanted a small, intimate ceremony. She got a production with 300 guests, most of whom she'd never met. Still, Emma tried to make it work. She endured their criticism, their condescension, their constant attempts to remake her in their image. She believed that love could bridge any divide, that family could be built on patience and understanding. She was wrong. And by the time she got pregnant, the Sterling's true nature was about to reveal itself in the cruelest possible way. The pregnancy changed everything. For Emma, it was a moment of pure joy. She'd always wanted to be a mother, and despite the difficulties with her in-laws, she hoped that a grandchild might soften their hearts. Maybe a baby would be the bridge that finally connected her to David's family. For the Sterlings, however, the pregnancy was something else entirely, a threat. It started with small comments. Patricia would make remarks about Emma's weight, her food choices, her lack of proper breeding knowledge. Richard would question whether Emma was capable of raising a Sterling heir properly. They started insisting that Emma move into their estate for the duration of her pregnancy, claiming they needed to supervise her care. David, as always, said nothing. He didn't defend his wife or protect her from his parents' increasingly controlling behavior. He became a ghost in his own marriage, present but absent, there but not really. Emma confided in me during her 6th month. We were having coffee at my house, and she broke down in tears. "Mom, they want me to sign something," she sobbed. "Papers that would give them legal guardianship rights if anything happens to me during childbirth. They said it's just a precaution, but it feels wrong. It feels like they're planning for me to die." My blood ran cold. I told her not to sign anything, to talk to a lawyer, to seriously reconsider her living situation. But Emma was caught between her love for her husband and her growing fear of his family. She wanted so desperately to believe that everything would be okay. Then came the family retreat at the Sterling's lake house. Patricia insisted that we all needed to come together before the baby arrived, to bond as a family. Despite my reservations, Emma wanted to go. She still believed in the possibility of reconciliation, of being accepted. If you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to our channel. We share real stories like this one every week. Stories about resilience, family, and justice. The retreat was tense from the start. Patricia and Richard barely acknowledged my husband and me, treating us like unwanted guests in their own home. They fawned over Emma's pregnant belly, but spoke about her as if she wasn't in the room, discussing the Sterling baby and our grandchild, without ever acknowledging Emma as the child's mother. On the 2nd day, I overheard a conversation that made my heart stop. I'd gone looking for the bathroom and found myself near Richard's study. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear voices inside. Patricia was speaking to David, her tone sharp and businesslike. "Once the baby is born, we'll file for custody," she said. "We have documentation of her instability, her inadequacy as a mother. Dr. Morrison has agreed to provide medical testimony. Your father's lawyers have already drawn up the papers." "What about Emma?" David asked, his voice flat, emotionless. "Emma is a temporary inconvenience," Richard replied. "Once we have our grandchild, she becomes irrelevant. We've been more than generous in allowing her into this family. She should be grateful for the time she's had. And if she fights it?" David asked. Patricia's laugh was cold. "With what resources? With what family support? She's alone, David. She has been since she married you. That's how we planned it." I stood outside that door, my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. They were going to take Emma's baby. They'd been planning it all along. The controlling behavior, the isolation, the legal documents. It was all part of a calculated plot to steal her child. I had to warn her. But first, I needed proof. I needed a witness. I needed Marcus. After Marcus pulled Emma from the lake, we didn't waste a single moment. While Patricia, Richard, and David stood there in their cold silence. Marcus looked at me and gave a single nod. We both knew what had to happen next. "We're leaving," I announced, helping Emma to her feet. "Right now." "You can't," Patricia said, her voice sharp. "The retreat isn't over. We have plans." "Your plans are over," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from righteous anger. "You just assaulted a pregnant woman. We're done here." "Assault?" Richard scoffed. "It was an accident. She slipped. I recorded the whole thing," came a voice from behind us. We all turned to see my husband standing on the upper deck, his phone held high. His face was pale but determined. "I've been recording for the past 20 minutes. I got everything. The push, your reactions, your complete lack of concern for your pregnant daughter-in-law. All of it." The blood drained from Patricia's face. Richard's jaw tightened. And David, finally, showed some emotion. He looked terrified. "You can't," Patricia started. "We can, and we will," Marcus said. "But first, we're taking Emma to the hospital. You're going to stay here and think very carefully about what you've done. And then you're going to hear from our lawyers." "David," Emma whispered, looking at her husband with tears streaming down her face. "Say something. Please." David opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his parents, then at Emma, then back at his parents. In the end, he said nothing at all. His silence was the loudest answer he could have given. We got Emma out of there within 10 minutes. Marcus drove while I sat in the back with Emma, wrapped in blankets and still shaking. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what we feared. Emma was in early labor brought on by the trauma and stress. But miraculously, both she and the baby were stable. While Emma rested in the hospital bed, Marcus and I met with my brother's lawyer friend, Janet Reeves. We showed her the video, told her everything we'd overheard, and laid out the Sterling's plot. Janet's expression grew darker with each revelation. "This is attempted kidnapping, potentially attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit custody fraud," Janet said. "With this evidence and your testimony, we can bury them." And we did. The video went viral within 24 hours of being posted online. The local news picked it up. National media followed. The Sterling's reputation, so carefully cultivated over generations, crumbled in a matter of days. Richard's business partners began distancing themselves. Patricia was removed from the boards of several charitable organizations. Their social circle, once so impenetrable, turned on them overnight. But the real justice came from the legal system. David was served with divorce papers while the Sterlings were hit with multiple lawsuits, criminal charges for assault, civil suits for emotional distress, and a restraining order keeping them away from Emma and the baby. The prenatal custody documents they tried to get Emma to sign were exposed as fraudulent and coercive. Dr. Morrison lost his medical license for agreeing to provide false testimony. The Sterlings' lawyers abandoned them rather than face professional consequences. Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl 3 weeks later. She named her Hope because that's what she represented. Hope for a better future, free from the Sterlings' manipulation and control. It's been 8 months since that day at the lake, and I still sometimes wake up hearing the sound of that splash. But now, when I close my eyes, I also see what came after. Emma's strength, Hope's first smile, and the family we rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. Emma moved back home with us after the divorce was finalized. She needed time to heal, both physically and emotionally. The trauma of what the Sterlings had planned, what they'd attempted, ran deep. She went to therapy twice a week, worked through her anger and grief, and slowly began to reclaim herself. The woman who emerged from that healing process was different from the Emma who'd married David. She was harder, yes, but also stronger. More certain of her worth. More protective of her boundaries. She'd learned the hardest way possible that not everyone who claims to love you has your best interests at heart. David tried to reach out several times, sending letters that alternated between apologies and accusations. He blamed Emma for destroying his family's reputation. He claimed he'd loved her, that he'd been caught between loyalty to his parents and his feelings for her. But his words rang hollow. Love that stays silent in the face of cruelty isn't love at all. It's cowardice. Emma never responded. Some silences are louder than any words. The Sterlings faced real consequences for their actions. Patricia and Richard were found guilty of assault and conspiracy. They received suspended sentences, massive fines, and permanent restraining orders. Their empire didn't collapse entirely, but it was severely damaged. More importantly, they lost access to the one thing they'd valued above all else, their grandchild. They would never know Hope. They would never hold her, never influence her, never have a chance to shape her into their image. That, I think, was the justice that hurt them most. Marcus became a permanent fixture in our lives after everything that happened. He'd always been close to our family, but the crisis bonded us in new ways. He became Uncle Marcus to Hope, the hero who'd saved both mother and child. Every time I see him making silly faces to get Hope to laugh, I'm reminded that real family shows up when it matters most. My husband and I have had our own reflections during this time. We've asked ourselves hard questions. Should we have seen the warning signs earlier? Could we have prevented any of this? Should we have fought harder against the marriage from the start? The truth is, we did the best we could with the information we had. We can't protect our children from every poor decision, every painful experience. All we can do is love them, support them, and be there when they need us. If you've made it to the end of the story, thank you for listening. These kinds of experiences change you, and sharing them helps in the healing process. If you'd like to hear more real stories about family, resilience, and finding justice, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to our channel. Emma is dating again now, cautiously and carefully. She's building a career, raising her daughter, and creating a life defined by her own choices rather than someone else's manipulation. Hope is healthy and happy, surrounded by people who genuinely love her. Sometimes at night, I sit in the nursery while Hope sleeps and I think about that day at the lake, about how close we came to losing everything. But then Hope stirs, Emma checks on her, and Marcus calls to say goodnight, and I'm reminded that we didn't lose. We survived. We fought back.